Welcome to Yogiviews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Antonio Sausys. This is the second part of a two-part show where I'm interviewing Lyn Prashant. Grief is the normal reaction to loss, regardless of whether the loss is of a relative or the discontinuation of our favorite brand of sneakers. As long as we are attached to a person or thing, we will grieve its loss. Because we identify ourselves through our attachments, when we lose a person or a thing we are attached to, we also lose part of ourselves, an aspect of our identity, who we previously were. Until recently, grief was thought to be a purely emotional issue. But now we know that grief affects the mind, the body, and even the spirit of an individual. The commonly accepted popular therapy for grief is get over it. The truth is that it doesn't work. We don't get over our grief. And in recent years, we've witnessed how different integrative modality practitioners are coming up with different ways of addressing grief. I have the pleasure of having here today with me a person whose personal path had led her to create a process to address the mind, body, and spiritual symptoms and aspects of grief. She is also an esteemed colleague and a dear friend, Lyn Prashant. Hi, Lyn. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Antonio.
Welcome to our show.
Good to see you.
Lyn Prashant is the founder, counseling, and education director of the degriefing process, integrative grief therapy. She is an internationally recognized grief counselor, a crisis team consultant, a published author, and a massage teacher specializing in the somatic aspects of grief. She teaches at UC Berkeley, California Pacific Medical Center, the Kaiser Hospice, the Zen Hospice Project, and the Mayo Clinic, and is also in private practice in the San Francisco Bay Area in California and in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, where she lives part of the year. A lot of people think that grief is the normal reaction to the loss of a person, to death. Let's put it that way. And as I said in the beginning, we know now that it's not just that. What other types of losses cause grief?
Anything that we are attached to, that we haven't invested. Well, here, I like my shawl very much. When I recognized that I would like to wear it this evening, I couldn't find it, I'd be at a loss. Loss comes in degrees. That's a relatively minor loss. It's either misplaced, somebody else is loving it and wearing it, or I'll find it later. The loss of my sister, tremendous amount of grief. Not the same degree of grief. A cataclysmic difference in the impact. All grief from loss. I lost a lovely necklace. The necklace cost $1 in Santiago, Chile. It dropped out of my hand. I have not seen it in 10 years. Not a great loss, yet I remember it to talk about it, because in its own way it's irreplaceable unless I fly. We lose our train of thought. We lose time in traffic. We lose face if we're embarrassed. As we age, we lose bodily functions. We lose hope and faith. We question God, those people who are truly connected to a belief system about how they see and feel and love God. Sometimes that's questioned when a loved one's lost. Grief happens when somebody loses their job. Pet loss is a huge factor in people's well-being that is still becoming as recognized as it deserves to be. Spousal loss, divorce, huge loss. Loss of health, loss of independence, loss of wealth. Economically, People are grieving globally, loss of life, what happened in Haiti, what happened in other places on the planet, the Louisiana levees. That loss is cumulative. The body holds the energy of the information it gets until we make sure. For example, the lymphatic system needs movement to cleanse and drain. Grief finds a place to live, combines with past losses. And until we say, I need to shine a light on my grief, where do I hold it? I don't want to live carrying this grief. We can carry our grief for a lifetime. I, tongue-in-cheek fashion, name it grief schlepping. We can put it down. We used to think that time healed grief. Now my premise is that time and conscious focus softens the rough edges and the painful slices that grief does to the life that we named. We need to create a new normal with the loved one or the dog or the inability to hear or walk is factored into the new equation of what normal is, which is ever changing.
Now, you've mentioned some very clear symptoms of grief in the body, and most of us know about the sadness and the depression, also the anger, because grief is not always only sad feelings. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's anxiety. But spiritually, what could you say are some of the spiritual symptoms of grief? How does grief affect people spiritually?
Spirituality, which I differentiate from religion, which is something organized and named and somewhat packaged. Spirituality I name as each individual's internal and personal, external and expanded relationship to our environment, our surroundings, our sense of connection, our ability to integrate experiences that we have in our daily life. It's not just on a Sunday or a Saturday night or a Friday night. Our spirituality, Mark said to me when he was dying, do not challenge yourself about going off your spiritual path. Your spiritual path is where your feet take you. I won't be here. You'll continue on your path. I took that to heart. I took that to soul, pun intended, that my feet take me on my path where I need to go and what I need to do. In the 2001 Trade Tower disaster, people questioned God. How could a God do this? Would my God allow this? How can I change my relationship to God if this is what an all-loving, omnipotent God would allow and do? Some people decided they didn't believe in God. Some people questioned and shifted. I've worked with people who have a spiritual basis for their lives. I hear again and again that at the time that people are confronting their mortality, that a spiritual basis is exactly a tremendous help, because there are things that the mind cannot rationalize away, explain, or categorize. One time I said to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, my 36-year-old husband is dying. It's not fair. And she looked at me as only Elizabeth could at 5 feet minus, a little less than 5 feet, and said, fair? Somebody told you your life should be fair? You poor girl. I heard her. It's not about fair, it's about is. Life is. A dear friend of mine once told me that his master said that life is breath in and breath out. And the rest is the story. Our minds love to make up stories. Sometimes my mind would rather make up a story and not even have it be true, rather than have no story. So in times of grief, I just want to say that our minds are not our friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're just an expression of all our experiences and opinions.
So in order to address grief, you've created a process called the degriefing process.
Yes.
Degriefing. Is it possible to degrief?
It is not. It is possible to use our grief as fuel to continually move the grief through the system. I was once called the roto-rooter of grief. I was once called the roto-rooter of grief counseling. My intention is to move it along. My intention is to name it, assist that individual in recognizing it, and then choosing activities that can access this. We can access our joy. We feel excited, we do something with it. We dance, we sing, we laugh, we play. Why not use our grief?
How would you define the degriefing process? How would you describe the degriefing process?
It's a mind-body process, or for some, a body-mind process, meaning that the mind has a body and the body has a mind. So it's got to engage at least those two aspects. That's the minimum for the work I do. Now, I will start with verbal work so that I can meet that individual living in their body, which I also refer to as the vehicle. Without the body, they wouldn't be able to get to my office. When I know them a bit from my intake form and from questions I ask and from pictures they show me and from things I sense as I watch them and hear them, tone of their voice, body language, facial expression, the way that they tell their story. I then talk to them about what they might do to work with their grief. Now, we've already named that we're uniquely alike and we're uniquely distinct, duality. With that person, the degriefing process names what's going on and encourages physical activity. Whether I do the massage, or I refer to an acupuncturist, or a yoga therapist, or a dance teacher, drama teacher, psychodrama, improv, Pilates. Whatever it is that I refer would be in the scope of possibility that could serve that person. Some I tell, draw a picture every day. Some I say, I want you to write a paragraph every day. It's uniquely and individually designed to meet the needs of that individual and encourage a shift from grief-stricken, incapable, and devastated to a beginning of a reclamation of personal power. If we're talking about personal power, and energy fuels power, energy can be joy, energy can be sadness. Albeit true that some are easier to engage in a positive way. I don't mean crying's not positive, it is. After the cry, what? A hot bath? A walk in the park? A phone call to a loved one? A great movie? How does one balance the journey? Because there's no quick fix, because it's an accumulation. And fresh loss re-stimulates the grief in the body of prior loss. So a little fender bender, which for that person could be such a trauma, since that was their new used car they worked for the last 3 years, and somebody casually opens the door and dings it. Their car's cream color and the ding is red. It's a loss of the original, loss of the familiar. Grief can really be narrowed down very succinctly to the loss of the familiar. Because as humans, we attach, we invest. We like to know what's happening. The mind likes to feel like it's in control, and life does not support that thought form.
How would the degriefing process help a person change their relationship to grief? Because you said earlier that we don't get over our grief, that we change our relationship to it. How does the degriefing process help a person do this?
Okay, thank you for that question. Let's rephrase it and say it helps them change their relationship to the loss of whatever, therefore the grief that's in the body that relates to the loss. Grief is, by many names. We work to change relationship to the loss, the story of the loss, the truth of the impact of the loss. Because first we're in shock and we can't do very much process work. Shock is a numbing, protective, energetic sense of difference, of wow, of awe, of Stephen Levine calls as the sound of suchness. We change relationship to our loss day by day, day by day. In the beginning, when Mark died, every day was the 5th day he's dead, the 6th day, the 4th month, the 8th month. By the 22nd month, I woke up one day and he was not the first thing I thought of. Something about my life had enabled me to focus on something other than his loss as my primary thought. It rushed in after. I went through what people do, afraid to lose the connection. I realized he was within the realms of my being, and I couldn't lose that. And I missed him. Yet, loss is forever. Extinction, loss, it's forever. The story we tell about it and the way it impacts us. Therese Rando talks about an experience called a stug, an S-T-U-G, a sudden temporal upsurge of grief that is triggered by any sensation, a sight, a sound, a thought, a touch, a smell. We have a reaction within our body where the grief surges because for that moment out of time and space, the loss just wells up within us with power. My experience with my own losses and working with others is that they get less frequent, they get less intense, and they become nameable and recognizable to that person to understand what it is that is still getting them hooked. Grieving, regrieving. So degriefing, is it possible? Degriefing's intention is to use the available grief in our bodies as fuel to change our lives in the way that we want to and know we're being guided to do so.
And what are some of the modalities that the degriefing process use?
Well, certainly yoga, with my training and what I've witnessed in the certification trainings that are led, that the yoga is a tool. It's as though I have a board that's rough and I need to sand it because there are splinters that people are getting splinters. I need a sander. I don't need a shovel. So with each person, one might need a sander, one might need just to do it manually. Yoga is across the board something that people can do because of the blessing in it, that it can be visualized and also practiced fully in the panchas, from pancha 1 to pancha 5 degrees of difficulty. I can visualize and gain benefit in my endocrine system because my mind creates pictures that shift the chemicals, that stimulate my limbic system where memory is housed, right near the grief center where loss is registered. So yoga, dance, writing, walking, hiking, swimming, treadmill, conscious crying as a way to release, crawling to bring back primal feelings, bathing, anything in nature that's authentic, such as Swami Satchidananda's energy when I was near him. Anything that nature can in fact grace us with, its beauty, moves us. We're talking about movement, internal movement, brought on sometimes by the external movement.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is less important than doing something with the intention. Name it, locate it, bodily, a felt sense to a bodily shift. So Eugene Gendland, in his own brilliance, may have actually created a formula that's very applicable. Locate it, name it, felt sense, describe it, and move with it, both internally and externally.
You named today the second task of mourning that William Worden describes so well. And he says that that task is to move through the pain of grief. Is there a way around, over it, under it? Do we only have to go through it?
Well, my response is, if you figure out how to go around it before I do, I want it to be the first one you call. I've not found a way to go around it. It's a basic premise. It lives within us. It registers in our cellular tissue. As yoga says, we have consciousness in every cell. I can only go into it, work with it, engage, acknowledge, accept. Some people can't accept. Can they acknowledge? I can't run from it. I watched my kitty today pick up, excuse me, a very brilliant and beautiful yellow feather on a stick. And she loves the feather. So she picked the end up in her mouth and she chased the feather. And I thought to myself, that's what a lot of us do. We chase something illusory because it's pretty and appealing, rather than sitting with what is.
Now, in regards to this, cultures grieve differently. And you have lived for a time in India, but you have also worked in Argentina, in Uruguay. Now you live part of the year in Mexico. What are some of those cultural differences? Do we grieve differently as a culture?
The guidelines of the engagement with grief are often established with the cultural values as the guiding principles. For example, years ago, when a woman of a certain caste in India lost her husband, she was in fact to get on the funeral pyre with him. That was the way that culture expressed the loss of him. She joined him. In Mexico, on November 1st and November 2nd, the country honors the lost loved ones. Children on one day, adults, All Souls Day, All Saints Day. They embrace the opportunity to gather, to make meaning, to paint the grave, to put up pictures. There are special foods made that they eat at the gravesite. The Jewish culture sits Shiva, which interestingly enough spelled exactly like Shiva. Sits Shiva. The Orthodox tradition has the mirrors covered and has the surviving loved ones, the mourners, sitting on wooden boxes to experience the discomfort, the reality of the harshness. They're not allowed to shave. They're not allowed to engage in a ritualistic primping. It's about the austerity of loss. The colleague of mine is a Chinese American woman and told me that in the Chinese culture, the loss of an elder is considered to be a greater loss or a more painful loss than the loss of a child, which in the United States of America, loss of a child is said to be out of order, absolutely unconscionable, and not okay, the worst. In China, it's thought that the elder held the heritage, the legacy of the tapestry of the cultural weaving of life and style and times and history, and that the child is yet to prove oneself. So when we do cross-cultural counseling, the humble approach, even though I might know something, because I can't study the cultural traditions of every culture, would be to ask, how might this be embraced in your homeland?
In your homeland. Now, knowing these different cultures and these different rites and ways of grieving, and knowing also that, as you said at the beginning, the American culture, the North American culture, let's be fair, because Americas are three.
Yes, yes, yes.
The North American culture does not acknowledge grief, as you said. In fact, corporate America will give you 72 hours after a loss, and you got to be back at work.
And get over it.
And get over it. What would be your one piece of advice for the American culture, knowing all these other cultures, these other ways of grieving? What would be your one piece of advice for the culture at large?
To begin to normalize talking about loss, not waiting until we have loss or in the throes of the pain of the loss. To teach it as a fact of the human condition, that everybody we know and everybody we love will die. And as Stephen Levine once said, his wife was sitting next to him, and he looked at her with love and looked at the audience and said, if you really love your partner, you will hope they die before you, so that they don't have to grieve your loss. We need to talk about loss. We need to not avoid the truth of it and then feel victimized by it. The mini losses, the daily losses, we need to educate our kids. Yeah. That's what loss feels like. It's to normalize the fact, birth we have no problem talking about, but death, we need more balance. We need more authenticity about the fragility. We're fragile.
Thank you. So everything ends, and time runs, and the show is coming to the end. So I thank you, Lyn, for being with us today. And if a viewer would like to get in touch with you, what would be a good way of doing so?
I can be found on the internet. You can find me under the name of Degriefing. Soon you will find me under the name, you can also find me under the name of integrativegrieftherapy.com, degriefing.com. You can find me and I will respond to you. Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks for being here, but thank you mostly for your work, for addressing grief from this special perspective that you have created, and that hopefully can bring some insight on how to grieve better, if that can be done. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. This was Lyn Prashant. She is the founder, education and counseling director of the process called the degriefing process, integrative therapy, integrative grief therapy. She is an internationally recognized grief counselor, a crisis team consultant, a published author, and a massage teacher specializing in the somatic aspects of grief. She teaches at UC Berkeley, St. Mary's Hospital, Kaiser Hospice, the Zen Project Hospice, and the Mayo Clinic. She has practice in the San Francisco Bay Area, as well as in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, where she lives part of the year. I thank you for being with us today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next show. If you want to say something to me, please shoot me an email at antonio@yogiviews.com. I will see you the next time.